Jorge Bergoglio became Pope Francis in 2013, shortly before I myself became Catholic in 2014. Now, I must admit that trying to be a faithful Catholic under this papacy has not been easy. Pope Francis has been a notoriously difficult pope to deal with when it comes to statements that he makes on social media or that are captured and reported by the press. Whether it's indicating support for same-sex civil unions, saying all religions are a path to reach God, assuring a child that his atheist father is in heaven, or the infamous Pachamama controversy, the kinds of issues have generated a varied response, especially in the Catholic apologetics community. At one end of the spectrum, you have the Francis fanboys who act like he can do no wrong and will jump through any hoop to make it appear that these kinds of statements and actions are well within Catholic orthodoxy and that there's really nothing to be concerned about. On the other end of the spectrum, you have people that have all but given up on Pope Francis, won't even refer to him by his proper title, and have even oriented their ministries around criticizing him. And that's just the responses from the faithful Catholics. Well, as a conservative Catholic, I definitely have issues with many of the statements that Pope Francis has made. As a Catholic apologist, I am aware that there are ways around some of his more egregious sounding errors, and it's that line that has kept my confidence in the Catholic Church and its teachings regarding itself. As a case in point, let's take the death penalty. It is no secret that Pope Francis is strongly against the death penalty. He has made it absolutely clear that he is seeking its complete abolishment from modern life, and he even went so far as to change one of the paragraphs of the Catholic Catechism to reflect his views. What's interesting, though, is that in the change to the Catechism, he didn't come right out and say what many people are afraid he thinks. Now, when the U.S. Conference of Bishops got together to reflect Pope Francis's teaching in the revision to the Catechism, they used the term inadmissible without clarifying what it meant, commenting on the use of language like inadmissible, morally unacceptable, etc. Bishop Robert Barron said that they were going for a certain eloquent ambiguity on the immorality of the death penalty. Now, the job of theology is to get rid of ambiguity. However, I do think it reveals something very interesting. You see, there are at least two different reasons to oppose the death penalty. One of them is that it is intrinsically evil. When something is intrinsically evil, it is evil in and of itself. It is evil strictly because of what it is, and it cannot be made good by any external circumstance. That is to say, it is an essential or a per se evil. Something that is extrinsically or per accidence evil is something that would only be evil under certain circumstances. Now, when the morality of an action is strongly related to its circumstances, many times church leadership will make what is called a prudential judgment of those acts. A prudential judgment is not against the act in and of itself or per se, but rather its extrinsic morality based on current circumstances. So, for example, Pope John Paul II was also against the death penalty, but when he changed paragraph 2267 in the Catechism, he made it very clear that it is because of the context of today's world that the death penalty should be called into question. Now, a prudential judgment is not one that has to be agreed upon because prudential judgments require certain expertise, facts, arguments, and it is not difficult to be wrong in those situations. Papal infallibility covers theological and moral issues, not necessarily the kinds of things that have to be sifted through and judged with expertise and authority, and those are usually what are required for an accurate prudential judgment. Now, the problem with Pope Francis' position is that although he very much seems to think that the death penalty is a per se or intrinsically evil action, he can't really say so. The history of the Catholic Church shows that it is clearly in favor of the death penalty as a moral act. As Fazer and Bazet point out in By Man Shall His Blood Be Shed, This teaching is so rooted in church history that it would be a major scandal to try to overturn it at this point. However, a prudential judgment that says that the death penalty is not a per se evil, but today, under current circumstances, is no longer acceptable, is a very different claim. But Pope Francis often frames his judgments on the death penalty as intrinsic moral judgments and not merely prudential judgments. So, my question is, why doesn't he just come out and declare it? All Pope Francis has to do is declare ex cathedra from the chair in his role as the supreme pontiff of the church that it is now dogma that the death penalty is a per se evil and can never be morally practiced. That's all he's got to do. But instead, all he's done are make these statements to journalists and change the catechism in such a way that it is, at best, ambiguous if it is the case that papal infallibility guarantees that even a pope is not able to overturn church teaching. Then that would have some explanatory power as to why Pope Francis could have made a clear statement. He has made clear statements, but he hasn't declared his opinion as dogma, and the Catholic Church teaches that he cannot. Now, while a pope being faithful to church teaching certainly affirms papal infallibility, a pope that seems to want to change church teaching, but can't seem to, seems to me to provide evidence that the doctrine of papal infallibility is true. Popes can make all kinds of errors. It is only when they try to declare something dogmatically that infallibility kicks in. So, while there have been bad popes throughout church history, it is the church's teaching that is guaranteed to remain true. So what it comes down to for me is this. I didn't become Catholic because of the private views of any particular pope, so there is no reason to not be Catholic because of the private views of any particular pope. Indeed, the fact that we seem to have a pope that would like to change church teachings but can't seem to actually do it may count as evidence that I made the right choice. I really appreciate you guys watching this video. Like and subscribe if you are into Catholic apologetics, theology, and philosophy. Until next time, I'm Doug. God bless.